Jude verse 2. Mercy, peace, and love be yours in abundance. We talked about mercy last time. Pardon me. Let's talk about peace. Peace is an interesting concept, and it's my belief that more than any other one single thing, what humans long for is peace. Peace with themselves, peace with those around them, and ultimately, even though I think there are people that don't know this, they don't identify it, but what they long for most is peace with God. I even wonder if there are people who believe there is no God they're still looking for some kind of peace with the universe. This is a desire. I think it's even a need that's not going away. Generation to generation, technological advance to technological advance is going to look a little different. It's going to feel a little different. But down at the root, we all long for peace. And a lot of times we don't even know what peace looks like. We just know this is not it. Well, there are other times, though, we know exactly what we think peace is. And that's what we're looking for. And when it doesn't happen, we're understandably frustrated, sometimes even angry. So when Peter writes about peace here, what's he writing? Well, he wrote in Greek, and the word he used is a word that's got several broad applications. One is just the absence of conflict, one nation with the other. That this word can be used that way, but we're not in a national situation. This is personal, and so it has to do with the one aspect, the absence of conflict between individuals. Absence of conflict is a notable, important quality of peace, and yet the extended meaning in this Greek word has to do with prosperity. Now, not in the, okay, I'm going to make an enemy, I know, but not in the televangelist kind of way. Okay, this is not about you just getting fabulously rich and having a jet plane and a Ferrari in the driveway. This is a prosperity of soul. Remember in 1 John, 3 John, we were talking about how John's prayer for his desire for Gaius is that his soul would prosper. And that's the level of prosperity that I think Jude would be talking about when he uses the word peace. In this sense, it's much like the Hebrew word shalom. I've talked about this before. I'm going to talk about it again. Shalom is maybe one of the most wonderful words in the entire Hebrew language, and Hebrews would greet one another with it, and they would speak it as they left. It was the Hebrew aloha, which means hello or goodbye, depending on whether you're coming or going. And for a Hebrew, this desire for shalom for themselves and for others, when you use it as a greeting and a word of departure, a farewell, it was a simple one-word prayer for the other person, that God would grant them a fullness, a fulfillment, a prosperity of soul And it would be in terms of health. It would be in terms of their relationships. It would be on. This is a word that spills over and washes over every aspect of life. And Jude says this: mercy, peace, and then third, love. Wow. Now, the word that Jude uses here is agape. And boy, if you've been in church for any period of time, at a church where the Bible is preached, you've heard your teachers and preachers talk about this word agape. To me, in an interesting sense, this word appears in Scripture, but not in other classical Greek literature. Plato he uses love, but he doesn't use agape. Aristotle, same thing. And by the way, Plato and Aristotle were really deep, valid thinkers, okay? They didn't know Jesus, but they were deep and valid, just the same. Only in Scripture is this word for love, agape, used. There are 4 general words for love, and if you're interested and you'd kind of like to dive deeper into this, C.S. Lewis wrote a book, the title is The 4 Loves, where he describes the 4 words in Greek that are used for love. Agape is God's love. This is love that can be imitated by everyone, and we replicate it to a degree, but only God is capable of doing this kind of love in its most perfect form. It's unselfish, absolutely unselfish. The bigger word for that is altruistic. It's all about the other, the good of the other, the ultimate good of the other. It's a love that has no condition. Now let's take a little sidetrack, bunny trail on unconditional love. I believe that God gives us unconditional love, but his blessing is not unconditional. One of his blessings is this unconditional love, but for God to pour out blessing on us in the various compartments of our lives, that's very conditional. You're just never going to be able to eliminate the law of the harvest. You reap what you sow. And go back, go to the Beatitudes. There are qualities of life that bring life, and there are qualities of selfishness that eventually bring death. Sin results in death. So the blessings of God are conditional. And while we're talking about blessings, they're also contextual. One of the conditions is the context. See, every blessing and promise in Scripture is not for me. Really. God promises to bless Abraham, that his progeny is going to be, you can't count the stars, we won't be able to count your generations, the sands of the sea, the grains of sand on the seashore. Well, see, that's not a promise to you or me. That was specifically to Abraham. And I think there are some promises in Scripture that are specifically to individuals that don't apply to us. There are promises that apply to everyone. And that now, these promises for blessing are conditional. So, God's love, no condition. Well, if there is a condition, it's this. It's conditioned by the one thing that has to be there is Him. He is the condition for this agape love. When I say this, I kind of hesitate to say it because it's not going to come out right. So I'll say it and then I'll try to clean it up. That's kind of how I roll. None of us is capable of real, consistent, sustained agape love. None of us. Some through practice and by the grace of God are better at it than others, but nobody can love like God does. In the sense that I can't love this agape way perfectly as God does. My agape, my imitation of agape, my emulation of agape, my attempts at agape are limited by the fact that I'm a human being. But does that mean, so why would you bother? I mean, if you're going to do an imperfect thing, it's imperfect, what, No. Imitate Him. Emulate this agape love. Now, here's another thing about that. It's difficult to do very well on this emulation thing without understanding and knowledge and experience of it. So this, I think, is kind of maybe the bottom line for us. No, it's not the bottom line, but it's pretty close to the bottom. That we will better be able to emulate agape, real, true agape, as we experience it. Most of us, all of us, are experiencing agape love virtually all the time, but we don't notice it. We're busy doing other things. Our life's taken up with tasks. And then there's the aspect that in order to notice and experience agape love, we have to intentionally look for it. And maybe that's one of the first applications of this whole thing is if you are intentionally paying attention to life and noticing God's agape love to you, guess what? Mercy and peace, I think, they are expressions of this agape love. And then Jude writes, be yours in abundance. And the King James Version says, be yours multiplied to you. And so the implication is more than you could possibly need or do anything with, right? So this is not like, and may God add mercy, peace, and love to you. No. There's a big difference between addition and multiplication, right? And He's wanting it to multiply. I would love if my life was an expression of God's mercy, peace, and love in abundance. And it won't be unless I receive, unless I accept and embrace. And you can't do that until you notice mercy, peace, and love. So here's your homework. Notice it today. Consciously put it in your head. Today, I am looking for mercy, peace, and love. And when those things come, I'm gonna notice. I'm going to see them. I'm going to see them for what they are. And then, two more things. I'm going to be grateful. I'm going to thank him. And I'm going to re-express them as best I can. Well, that's all I got. I'll connect again next time on So Care with Stevie Boy.